Okay, this video is about RPR game day scenario and how I implement it with one coach roughly for 20 to 25 athletes and get a complete RPR reset on everyone and test them to make sure that the RPR is taken hold, which is everyone knows is real easy, and the athletes basically do them themselves, and I just do a reflexive testing format. So with that being said, let me just show you actually the test that I'm talking about. So I'll just basically let this test run, and you can see it's only about 40 seconds. First thing I do, soas reflexive test, quad reflexive test, lateral sling, I switch around to the knee or the quad, soas, testing the lat for core stability, supraspinatus, shoulder, check the other arm for shoulder, supra, I hit the lat, I flip the athlete over, make sure the glutes are functioning, looking at the reactivity of them, how they turn on, hamstring, and there, we're done. The athlete has basically done their RPR correctly. Now, what transpires then is if you take a look at it, here's what happens. Now, I want to make a point that was 40 seconds. So any coach can rip through a number of athletes if they have, if they're done and they're pretty much turned on after their wake up drill. So be aware, athletes do all the wake up drills themselves. And for those of you that don't know what the wake up drills are, we'll actually go here. Here are the wake up drills where the athletes do themselves. And obviously when you go to a Reflexive Performance Reset clinic, you are taught how to teach your athletes this so that they can do that themselves. And then this is the thing about RPR, is that you can do it in such large group settings and you get instantaneous results. And we're very fortunate that we have this graph for the athletes to follow. So I basically place it on a wall and the athletes know what to do, and it correlates with the colors if they're not sure where, but the athletes have been in my program a couple years. They just follow this graph, they know exactly what they're hitting. So, and then what transpires is you know, after the athletes do the wake up drills themselves, the coach does the testing, which you just saw, that 40-second video. And then what I'll do, actually, and I'll show you a real video, another video of the same testing. Now, what I've found is sometimes if they're on a 10 scale, if they're an 8 or 9 in their reactiveness, so when I say that, the muscle actually turns on. And what happens is not turned on correctly or at its full potential, I will readdress it. So I may, and then let me hit that one. I'll let it run, and then I'll actually talk you through what's going on. So this is with some issues. Obviously, what we have is a soas, and the soas wasn't correct, what I felt, and there I retested it. So you can go back. I won't restart it again, but I hit it open palm very lightly up. Now the psoas is working. I test the quad, lateral sling. I just pounded on the edge of the hip to get the lateral sling turned on. Very good. Other lateral sling, I pounded on the hip. Usually you'll find both not working correctly. So what I had to do is that lateral sling wasn't working the way I wanted it, so I went in and dug a little deeper. Now I went in, hit the quad. Okay, check the quad, psoas is working. Okay, now I hit the lat, check the supraspinatus, just worked in there a little bit, and then the supra's on. Now I do the delt, other side, I'm working on the delt. Okay, supra's fine. Hit the lat needed a little bit of stability, so I just rubbed the lat spot. Okay, so then we flipped over. Now I check the glutes are fine. Fine. Now I'll check the hamstring. I'll go up, hit the hamstring, and roughly you can see that an athlete with some issues, because they've already done it themselves, I was able to finish this in 1 minute 14 seconds. even if they do have some issues. Now let me go back and explain a little bit more about the game day scenario. We checked the soas, okay. I re-hit it, address it because it wasn't turning on. And remember, this is not a strength test. This is really a reactive. Now, they'll be stronger, but it's how fast the muscle's turning on. So I'm not necessarily pushing super hard, but you can feel the reactiveness of the muscle. And once I addressed it with just a light rub, then it went back on. Now this is the quad. Now the lateral sling is important. Now this one didn't work, remember, so I just lightly touched it. Where you actually find problems with the lateral sling, and we're talking the abductors, go over on the glute med to the QL to the lat. The lat's included in all this stability work. So when people have unstable cores, it's actually not the core. The core is connected to the hips. I will say that again. It's not an unstable core, it's unstable hips, and that would be the lateral sling, which I can do a whole nother hour video on. Now, if your athlete's having trouble changing directions, check the lateral sling. If your athlete's having trouble staying on blocks, if they're offensive linemen, check the lateral sling. If the running technique's off, it's many times the lateral sling. So I'm going over to the other lateral sling, checking it, fine. Now this one, it didn't turn on the way that I want it. So then I just went to another level, as you guys know. Now the great thing about this is the athlete, if you're testing them, they can actually do all these after you test them on themselves again, and then you retest them. So the athlete could be hitting these spots on themselves, and that's a great thing about RPR, because you actually want to get to that point where the athlete is very understanding and can function by themselves, because you may not always be there to help them. So you got the knee, checking the quad wasn't on, that turned on very quickly. Check the psoas, I checked the lat, supraspinatus, especially for throwing athletes, this is very important. And then the delt, yep, these are all on. Switch to the other side. Now on this side, hit the supra. The lat is important. If it's off, again, remember I mentioned that lateral stability, because every time this foot strikes the ground, this arm slams down in the running technique. The stabilization of that comes from the lat. This is why it's important for running athletes. Then they'll flip over. I'll check the glutes. You can see that they jump up fairly high. And then hamstrings, which is a big problem sometimes for people. Now the hamstrings reactiveness, because if the hamstring's delayed, we know that if the hamstring's delayed in its firing and how fast it does in its reactiveness, what will transpire is that it can pull because the muscle's not in the right position as you striding and running. So that's the huge benefits of RPR. So there you have it, a minute 15 seconds basically for an athlete with some, they were very good, but they weren't great. And with RPR, you can get them to that level. So again, I just had the athletes do the wake-up drills. I tested them. Then you can readdress some issues. The athlete can do that. I basically take 20 athletes in 15 minutes for one coach prior to a pregame warm-up, and I run all my athletes through there, and then we go do the warm-up after we've done the wake-up drills. And what I've actually found too a lot is the second game that weekend, and my athletes, we play usually a series, they're still reactive and ready to play on the second game, so I just basically do a lot of testing. So there you can see how effective RPR is in regards to the your ability to institute it with a lot of athletes. Now a football team with 3 or 4 strength coaches or 5 can get the whole 100 athletes. If you're only playing 50 guys basically, then you can actually get that all done fairly fast. If you throw some athletic trainers in that know RPR, you can get these guys ready to go at a really high level within about 20 minutes before the game, sometimes even 10 people have reported to me.